Where's my theme song? I need a theme song. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Hey guys, I'm Dr. Jerry Cartsinell, and I am so glad to be with you today. Um, Today we're going to answer, try to answer, come up with some answers on why is my child doing? I get that question all the time. Why do you think he does this? Or why do you think we're doing that? Or why are we pushing on the I? Sometimes we don't know. We just don't know. But sometimes it gives us a clue on what's going on inside of them. Why are they clearing their throat? Why are they blinking hard? I mean, it, you're probably going to have lots of questions on why. And I have, for many of the questions of why, when they get old enough, they'll tell us. But for today, we're going to talk about why they do certain things that we know what's going on, and that will help us out. And there's a huge list. Why does my child have cradle cap? Why is my child itching their skin all the time? Well, what are they telling us? Very often, when they have this seborrhea on the face, the cradle cap, the itchy skin, maybe even silly behaviors, they're telling us that we probably have a fungal infection going on, or a mold, kind of in that same fungal mold family, and that's what is going on there. And what we would do then is we can do some testing both with stool and with urine, and think about adding an antifungal, okay, or something that has activity against mold, probiotics, and all that. So I think that would be very, very helpful for many of our children. What about nighttime awakening? Why does my child waken in the middle of the night? We can be wakening in the middle of the night for lots of reasons. One of them is constipation, and it hurts, and they're processing dinner, and there's no place for the food to go, so it can cause reflux. There's no place for the food to go, so it keeps impacting down below, and that expansion hurts. Because when the rectum, the area that holds the stool, starts to expand, it doesn't have much room to go. There's the tailbone, the rectum. For little girls, they got a uterus, and then the pubic bone with the bladder right in front of it. So when it starts pushing, it makes that area very uncomfortable and can wake them up. And after a child's had 3 or 4 or 5, 6 hours of sleep, boy, their batteries are totally charged. They wake up and they're not going back to sleep. So I'm going to think about constipation. But it may also be bowel pain from the foods they're eating, if they're still eating gluten or dairy. I've had children where we remove gluten and dairy from their diet, and the parents are thrilled because it's the first night the kid's been sleeping through the whole night since they were born. Well, because they were given formulas, and the formulas were milk-based, and they were telling us they had milk allergies, and that was ignored, and the kids were colicky 24 hours a day. So that's an interesting thing. What about children who are waking up with nightmares, screaming? Maybe they need melatonin, but melatonin can also cause nightmares. So it's one of those, we just have to give it a trial. What about the child who starts jumping around when they're excited, when things change? Now, very often what they're excited about isn't all that exciting to you and me. My son would do that when he'd hear the Barney theme song, the Barney the dinosaur. You guys might still remember that one, right? But he would just go ballistic with that. That might be telling us that he's got some neuromuscular irritability and might benefit from, say, lithium or boron, potassium, okay, magnesium. I use a lot of magnesium in my practice. Or maybe we need to work on how their senses are magnifying what's coming in. The kids who cover their ears, the kids who are jumping all around. I'll use CBD oil for that. The cannabinoids, as we've talked about in the past, they're going to bring down the volume of what they hear to a normal level, or bring down what they smell or taste or experience with their eyes, like Barney. Okay, so we can use CBD. What about the kids who fall a lot? And they run around, they fall. They run around, they fall. I've had kids fall from the transition from a carpet floor to a hardwood floor. You know, a little tiny step up, and they're off balance, or they walk in like a drunken sailor with the wide base gait, um, or they're just easily they, that again could be yeast, okay, or mold, bringing toxins into their body. What about the kids with the itchy eyes, the itchy nose? Well, most of us are going to relate that to allergies, but they can also have dark circles under their eyes. Why does my child have the thick folds underneath the eyes? We call those Denny's lines, and they look like curtain pleats. Allergies. And we would want to treat that with either some natural and allergy medicines. I love to use quercetin here in the office, but I'll also use Zyrtec, Singulair, because they can have, when we do blood work, very serious changes in how their body reacts to allergies, and that's called hyper IgE syndrome. How would you know if your child has that? You got to do a blood test. You have to figure out what's going on in the blood to do that. All right, so what about kids who have, foul smelling stools? Or they produce a lot of gas. They just have a lot of flatulence. Um, and it's very stinky. Or what about the stools that are really stinky? Why does he have such stinky stools? Why does he produce so much gas? I've had kids where when they have a bowel movement, the parents throw away the clothes and the diaper and they take it right out to the trash. It is just so foul smelling. Well, that's bad bacteria and or again yeast, or probably a combination of both. And we have to treat that. And what I found when it gets to that point, that the natural medicines like grapefruit seed extract or whatever, they don't have that horsepower to remove that from their body. So what I'm going to do is I'll try and get a stool sample, find out what's growing in there, look and see which antibiotics might be best choice for that particular child, put them on the antibiotic, put them on antifungal, put them on our probiotic, put them on some soluble fiber, and see what happens as far as clearing out the stink, reestablishing normal stools, and then maintenance, because I don't want to keep putting these kids on antibiotics, okay? But sometimes we just have to once something gets colonized. What about the child who has cold hands, cold feet, is kind of constipated, and I'm going to start thinking about thyroid, right? And I'll once again, we have to get some blood work, and I know that's not a favorite for many of you. In fact, my wife couldn't even be in the room when we were doing blood work for Josh. That just bothered her so much, and so we have to get some blood work to look at thyroid levels, and that would help us try to figure out if there's a problem with what we call the autonomic nervous system. What if they're flushing? What if they're hyperactive? What if they've got a rapid heart rate? Well, maybe we have too much adrenaline. So like today, I had a child who's hyperactive, always running around, and I mean from sunrise, from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, they are just tearing up the place like a hurricane. So those are things that I am going to look at as far as clues that something else is going on. And let me just let David know we're not getting any messages in. Sometimes Facebook won't give me messages or anything, and sometimes I don't have any messages. I just want to make sure that we're getting messages. Nothing on Facebook. Okay, so I'll just send that over to David, and he'll come in and tinker with that. All right, but there's more. All right. The child who is pushing on their eyeball, okay, hard. I mean, you almost think they're gonna traumatize that. I'm thinking of calcium deficiency. Something just did pop up there, okay, but I don't know if it's all. Okay, so I'm going to think of a calcium deficiency. What about the child who is pushing on their eyeball and we've got them on calcium and I measure the calcium, it's good. Then I'm going to add magnesium. And we have some special forms of magnesium here that go right into their water. Uh, Magnesium comes in different forms. Some forms are absolutely suited for moving your bowels, and some forms of magnesium are fantastic to getting into the brain, bringing it down, calming it down. Okay, and these forms are like magnesium chloride, magnesium bisglycinate, magnesium L-threonate. Those go in the brain. Magnesium citrate, magnesium oxide oxygenated. Those work in the bowels. So all magnesium is not the same, but it can, if you use the right one for the stools or the right one for the brain, bring about some really great changes for us there. Okay, so what happens when somebody's having problems with falling asleep? Why does my kid can't get to sleep? He just, as the sun goes down, he actually starts getting more and more wild. It could be he's perceiving bedtime as a crisis situation and he's releasing adrenaline. And when you get adrenaline released, you're not going to go to sleep. It's just not going to happen. Or some people, or I've called it, like sundowner syndrome, as we get closer and closer to bedtime, that transition from wake to sleep is just not going to work for the particular child. I'll have to give them melatonin, maybe Benadryl. I don't like to always use that, but it might have to. Ibuprofen, clonidine. But the child is telling us, I'm having a hard time transitioning to sleep, and you need to help me. So all the rocking and patting them on the back and that could work. But very important to get them off their electronics at least 2 hours before bedtime, because the electronics wreck our system of melatonin and actually agitate us more. And that's why some people can stay up till 2 in the morning on Facebook, because they've got the constant input from pictures, Pinterest, whatever they're watching, the news. They're also getting a blue light emitted from the laptop or the computer or the iPad, and that prohibits our production of melatonin. So we've got to do this sleep hygiene. All right. So let's see here. We got Christy signing in and Elena signing in. Hi guys. Let's see. Christy asks, my son has been smelling everything and seeking self-stimulatory activities. Are these behaviors usually associated with yeast overgrowth? He has been treated for yeast in the past. So my question would be, well, when he gets treated for yeast, do these symptoms go down? That's how I know a lot of things. It's cause and effect, or does it not do anything? I mean, we've treated him, and doc, it doesn't make a difference at all. What I try and look for in my practice is clinical changes. When I do something, something changes clinically. Sometimes not what I'm looking for, but it's kind of serendipitous that I find, oh, when I treat for yeast, I'm still hyperactive, but I got a lot more language, or I've got better sleep, or I've got much better eye contact, or he's following or she's following instructions a whole lot better. But it wasn't why I was trying to give the antifungal for, but I'll take it. Okay, I'll take any improvements clinically. So I would basically say, if that's yeast overgrowth and you treat the yeast and it doesn't change its clinical behavior, at least these behaviors, Christy, are not due to yeast. Maybe other things you're not thinking about are. All right, Alana asks, where does magnesium calm go? Not quite sure which magnesium calm you're using. If you're talking about natural calm magnesium, that actually can go both ways. It can help with the bowels and it can produce a calming effect. Now, if the calming effect is because we're moving our bowels, that's good. If the calming effect is because some of that magnesium is going in the brain, that's good too. So that's if you were using the product Natural Calm, but I'm not familiar with a magnesium calm. All right, so before we go any further here, let me answer some questions that were submitted to us this past week. Let's see, I think the name is pronounced Balraj. He asks, "Hi doctor, we follow gluten, dairy-free, sugar diet and started probiotics, zinc and liver cod oil and Opta B and methyl B12, but not enough results. What do we have to do now?" Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, it sounds, I mean, I don't know quite where you're at. If we go gluten free, dairy free, and a low sugar diet, then you should see improvements in behaviors: more focus, more calm, better eye contact, better sleeping, and a positive change in the stools. Whatever they were, constipated, loose, or whatever, they should improve. Probiotics, that's a generic term. Some probiotics do absolutely nothing. I'd say probably more than half of them are pretty useless stuff. They're just out there. The newer probiotics that have the strains and you're using them to specifically target certain problems, those are better. Zinc is good, but I don't know what our zinc level was. If our zinc level was great, then adding zinc isn't going to do anything. If our zinc level was low, then we should see some improvements. Cod liver oil. I like cod liver oil. It's an omega-3 fatty acid. I don't know how much you're giving, and I don't know how old the child is in the clinic, but I think adding cod liver oil is always good because our kids are not getting sufficient amount of omega-3 fatty acids. Optimize B, I'm going to assume that's a complex. That's just making up for things that we're not eating in the diet. I don't have people tell me, oh, since I started Optimize B, B complex, whatever, my child's so much better. It helps in processes that are going on behind the scenes, but it's not a game changer as far as your child goes. B12 injections work in the methylation pathway, but they're just one cog, one specific thing. When I work in the methylation pathway, I come in with folinic acid, vitamin B6, really quickly dimethyl or trimethylglycine, because what I'm trying to do is get that whole pathway working, especially with the folinic acid cycle, to help improve language. So I don't know quite what you're trying to accomplish there, but you're definitely on the right track. All right, Kiran says, "Hi, Dr. Jerry. We know detoxification pathway is going good. Oh, how do we know the detoxification pathway is going well? How long do we have to wait for another process?" Detoxification pathway. What we have to do, we do some blood work, and we do some stool, and we do some urine work to see what's going on with the child. And is there something that we are specifically trying to detoxify? For example, if we have mold growing in the intestinal tract, the detoxification pathway probably is not going to work there, and we probably have to give them an antifungal that has mold activity, like itraconazole. If the detoxification pathway is trying to detoxify a mercury exposure, and we've got a lot of mercury, then once again, that's helpful, but we're probably going to have to bring in chelators that are specific for mercury. If we're looking to detoxify pesticides, Roundup, glyphosates, then we might have to bring in what we've talked about in the past, the foot baths, where we're actually passing a current through them, like the ion cleanse. If we think that the toxins are in the skin, then we may have to do a sauna with Epsom salt baths. So it's not just the detoxification pathway, it's which pathway, through the skin, through our own natural ways, or do we have to give them something to detoxify them? And what are we measuring and how are we doing that? All right, Maria writes in, "If hair metal is showing no metals but only high minerals, does it mean that there are no metals?" Well, Maria, that's a great question, and the actual studies looking at toxins in the hair were done in Japan, and it was done on pubic hair, because we don't want this hair exposed to the environment. We want something that's not exposed to the environment. The problem with the hair analysis when I'm working with kids on the autism spectrum is the study that was done by Stephanie Cave and Amy Holmes in 2000. And they did a study looking at two groups of kids, the neurotypical children and our children on the autism spectrum, and they got hair from both groups. They sent the hair analysis to the laboratory, and the laboratory calls back and says, hey, one of these groups has high levels of heavy metals. Which group do you think it belonged to? Was it the, now remember this is hair testing, do you think it was the neurotypical kids or the special needs kids? Well, it turns out it was the neurotypical kids. Why? Because if they were getting metals in their body, they had the pathways, the detoxification pathways to get rid of it. So it was coming out through the hair. Now, the special needs kids, the kids on the autism spectrum, didn't have those levels. So you have two conclusions. A, they got heavy metals and they can't get them out, or they don't have heavy metals, so there's nothing to get out. So I don't use the hair analysis as a way of helping me try to figure out heavy metals or not. Now, I don't balance minerals based on hair. I balance minerals based on what I'm getting out of the blood, what's actually in the blood. I've not seen, again, in 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, in my pediatric population, any studies that compared hair analysis for selenium with blood analysis for selenium, and it shows that there's a 1-to-1 correlation. I haven't seen that. So I don't know if I can infer a low level or a high level as being meaningful that I need to employ more of a, say, selenium or a zinc based on hair. So I do all my blood testing and then base my treatment protocols based on what I'm finding in the blood. Alrighty, so let's see here, what else can I ask? Please advise if drinking silica water helps eliminate aluminum from the brain, per Dr. Chris Exley research. What is your suggestion? You know, the problem with that is how do you know? I mean, what brain aluminum tests are available to a 4-year-old? You're not going to do a spinal tap. You're not going to be drilling a hole in the cranium and sampling a core of brain material. How do we know, except maybe at autopsy? A little late, right? So I don't know what we're doing. And it's the same thing about using chelation therapy to remove toxic materials from the brain. How do we know they cross the blood-brain barrier? How do we know what we're starting with? How do we know when we're done? And we're working in the child's brain, so you better not hurt that brain with whatever element you're using. On the other hand, silica water, it's safe. I mean, you can do it, but then you start reading about, do we really want to be drinking water out of plastic bottles? And you start reading that, and then you're saying, okay, I'm using the silica water from Fiji, but it's in a plastic bottle, and I don't know how hot the warehouses were in Florida where they were storing pallets and pallets and pallets of it before it came to the grocery store. So I don't have an answer for you. There's no study showing that we took 100 kids with demonstrated elevated aluminum levels, and this group got the placebo water and this group got Fiji water or silica water, and we were able to demonstrate the aluminum coming down in the, we don't have any studies like that. So I like the idea, it sounds good, but there's no data to drive my recommendation one way or another. All right, good question. Excellent question. All right, so Julie asks, topic differences between CBD, CBG, and CBN. Okay, I think that one is a great topic, and we can actually do that next week because that's going to be a whole talk. That's on cannabis, guys, and the different forms of cannabis and THC, THCA. We'll talk about that. Thanks, Julie. I now know what we're going to be talking about next week. We'll go over the different alphabet soup of cannabis. Okay. And let's see here. Let's see. Arun asks, what is your view of using Brahmi or Bacopa with ashwagandha? I have no problem with that. I tend to start with one thing at a time and keep it pure because some of our kids are very persnickety. They're very sensitive to certain things. So I try and stay away from mixed things. Let's just use ashwagandha. Let's just use valerian and see how they do. they're doing great with that, then we can add in the Bacopa, for example, and see if they do better or about the same. So I try and start with single ingredients first and then move into complementing or adding to the effect, the entourage effect, bringing in more things to see if I can't control that anxiety. Natalie Liu asks, best chelation for the brain. The best chelator for the brain right now is in Europe, and it's in clinical 3 trials. It's from Emeramed, EMERAMED.com. Not available in the US yet, but it has got tremendous studies showing that it clinically removes heavy metals from the brain, okay, and safely. It's like really safe and very inexpensively. But for right now, the only place you can get it, that I know of, there's probably some more, but the only one I know is if you go to a clinic in Switzerland, get seen by the doctor, and then put on a trial of this product by Emeramed. So it's coming. I'm hoping that it will be approved in the European Union so you can get it in any country in Europe. Just means you have to plan for a trip to Europe. I don't know when you can do that, as soon as everything opens. But for right now, that's pretty much where it is. The other materials that we have, like DMSA, haven't been shown. Well, there's a couple of Russian studies that may demonstrate that it crosses the blood-brain barrier, but it's really iffy whether we have chelators that cross the blood-brain barrier and pull the material out in one direction, not both directions, because you certainly don't want them bringing in any heavy metals that they found in the big toe, and then bring it into the brain, like lipoic acid. We've got to be kind of careful with some of these things. We don't want to make matters worse. Okay, so that's a good question. And let's see here. Got some more questions on our line here. Christy asks, speaking of glyphosates, Roundup, detox, any other means of detoxing that besides the foot baths? I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any studies that show that, and that's worrisome. These are what I've been reading now is forever chemicals, and once they're made, you can't get rid of them. And once they're applied to the soil or in our bodies or whatever, you can move them, but you can't like break them down after a while. So they're a little bit worrisome. I haven't seen anything clinically demonstrated to adequately remove the glyphosates from the human being other than the foot soaks right now. But I'm sure there's going to be, but it's a slow science. Working on toxicology in children, first of all, the problem is, they don't have problems with Roundup. They don't have problems with glyphosates. They don't have mercury issues. They don't have lead issues. And it's kind of like the mind trick, the Jedi mind trick. There's not a problem here. Move along. They won't even look. Okay. Then when they look like lead, they'll say, these are safe levels of lead in your baby. And he's like, what level of lead would you like in your baby? Okay, or mercury? And the answer is 0. So there's this. They're coming from a mindset that you don't need to do anything. You have autism, just suck it up, buttercup, and move on. And I'm looking at, well, if there are reversible causes of toxicity, let's reverse it and see if we can recover some of these things that are going on in the kids. And a lot of are working with other parents and finding out they're doing this and they're doing that for their child, and they're seeing some nice reversals. A reversal from a child who's not speaking to speaking, a child who's not sleeping is sleeping, a child who's not having normal bowel movements is having normal bowel movements, a child who isn't eating is now eating, and a child who's grumpy and irritable and cranky all the time is now smiling and happy and just a great goofball to be with. These are reversals. I like those. Okay, so I like being able to reverse things. All right, Rita asks, hi Rita, what to do if diarrhea is not going in 4 years old toddler even after IV antibiotics? If we've got chronic diarrhea at this point, that child needs to see a gastroenterologist and have upper and lower endoscopy. They have to look inside the colon and do biopsies. They have to look inside the stomach and see what's going on there. As you know, diarrhea is never normal. Okay? You couldn't take my German Shepherd to the veterinarian and have the veterinarian tell me, well, Diarrhea in German Shepherds is fine. Just tell your wife to get used to picking it up all over the house. That isn't going to fly. We treat our animals a whole lot better than we treat our kids. The diarrhea is the stool is our exhaust pipe of our metabolic engine. If you get behind a car and it's chugging out blue and black smoke, you don't have to be a mechanic to say, there's something wrong with that engine in there. It's not burning right. When these kids are flailing out this spewing out this diarrhea, and it could be yellow, green, orange, foul smelling, it can burn the bottom, and it can cause infections and everything, and it's not due to Clostridia. I don't know if they checked all the right things. It's your exhaust pipe. It's telling you there's something wrong with this metabolic engine. Let's go see the mechanic. In this case, the mechanic is the gastroenterologist. But again, you get these guys or gals, these docs, who say, well, we'll call that toddler's diarrhea. Oh, toddler's diarrhea. That must be normal. I'm a pediatrician of 30 years. Diarrhea is never normal. Okay? But if you call it normal, then you don't have to do anything. In fact, the new doctors that are coming out of medical school and pediatric residency are seeing so much autism that they consider that a normal pathway to grow. In some children, it just is. That's just a normal thing. I came from a time where we never saw autism. It was 1 in 10,000. You might see one. So if they see this and they call it normal, you have to go find another doctor. Best way to do that is you get involved with a mommy group of autistic children, and they know the right neurologist. They know the right gastroenterologist. They know, don't bother with this place. They're useless. And they can kind of help you find that. All right. Hey, that's the end of the questions here. If you wrote a question and I'm not seeing it, that means it's not coming through, and that happens sometimes. But email it to us, and I will answer it next week. And next week's topic is going to be on the cannabis alphabet. CBD, CBN, THC. We'll get through them all, and I'll explain it to you. And then we can decide how we can use these, because that's real fun. So until then, have a great week. I know it's crazy out there in this world right now. Stay focused on your family. Stay focused on God. Stay focused on your child. And all this other stuff will pass. This too shall pass, right? But it is kind of kooky out there, and I know it's really causing a lot of anxiety. Get grounded. Go to the beach if you're near a beach. Just get grounded and get to what's real, and let's take care of matters. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye-bye now.